Hello and welcome to the round table. I think. I don't know if you heard that discussion before. I edited it out of this video.
Please edit it out.
Please.
I promise I will. Okay, so we're talking about characters today. I am joined by some amazing people, and we are going to be discussing our process, like how to make characters, why we like making characters, what we like about it, all of that good, juicy stuff. So you're trying to make a character, we got you. We'll help you make one too. So let's go ahead and dive in. Just remember that to take everything with a grain of salt, you can pause the disclaimer to read it. So let's introduce my amazing co-host, Janisha. Why don't you start for us?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming to this stream. My name is Janisha, or on the internet, I go by Janisha Colors. I create the webcomic series Universe. I'm also a graphic designer, so I just have a lot of experience illustrating, creating characters, making comics. So, yeah.
Awesome. Happy to have you here. What about you, Ellie?
Eiley.
Eileen.
It's all good. It's butchered everywhere. Hi, I'm Eiley. I am an animation student about to finish my degree, and I'm a webcomic artist too. I currently have two stories: Your Future Past, which I'm working on an animated pilot for at the moment, and The Assemblage of the Stars, which is my baby story, like my little belongs in my heart story.
Hmm. Adorable. Love it. Love it. Okay. And Shay, a returning host.
Ooh.
Oh, hey y'all. Yes, I am Shay. I go by Artsume Shay online. I create a webcomic called Space Ultima. And I also do a lot of like Webtoon vlogs and Webtoon discussion videos on my YouTube channel. And all of my fun art is also available on Patreon now and on Instagram. But yeah, this is a fun thing and I just want to keep doing it.
Awesome. So I'm so excited and happy to have all of you guys here. Like, we have a varying perspective on a lot of things, so I think it's going to make for a really good discussion. Thank you all for joining. I know it's the holidays, so I really appreciate you guys just taking the time to come and hang with me for a little bit. So let's get started. Let's just start from the beginning. And well, I clicked the thing too early. One second. Let me go back. Let me go back. So let's start with the topic of how do you create characters? And Janisha, why don't you start for us?
Okay, so how do I create characters? So a lot of the times I think of like who like who I am like how relatable they are. I think is what I usually start off with is like what do they do? Like do they have like a job or do they have hobbies in common with like audience and stuff like that? And then I kind of just build, kind of just sketch and draft like random, you know, different types of like designs for like the hair and the face and such. So it kind of, I think when you do your stories for long enough, you will continue to like expand upon the iterations of your character. So like it's okay to like experiment and stuff like that as you're building your story if you're like still building your story, but it's okay to still like change your character along the way when you are in the middle of your story. So like being like very solid with how they are as a character, like their personality, their dynamics with other people and such, but then you know expanding on that through the design and the elements, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a nice start. Like, I think for me in particular, like I have like a mad sort of process to things, and I'm like very particular. So like I like to begin with like simplifying the character down to like their voice because I always think about like from the writing perspective first. So like I'll pick out like three traits for a character and I'll be like it'll be two positive and one negative. So I'll like the name is not important at this point, and I feel like I focus on getting the tone of the character right. So
Hmm.
I'll be like they're kind, they're energetic, but they're dumb. And so I'll go about like crafting the character from those three elements, and that's kind of like the core base of how like I work through like their personality, I work through like their clothing aesthetic, I work through like their expressions, trying to keep all of those three concepts in mind, and I just kind of build from there. So what about you guys, Shay?
Yeah, I definitely think that like you guys starting off with, understanding who they are as a person. Yeah, like everybody has good and bad traits. If you think about like with Sims, you're building your character, you want to like, give them some quirkiness and things like that. Usually if I've already started writing my character, I kind of already have a look in mind. I think we all kind of do, kind of cast them in our minds, and that's kind of like the jumping off point for where I start off. In terms of like how they're going to look, I do use inspiration from like existing media. I try not to get too heavy on that because obviously I don't want to, rip off another idea, but like just going on Pinterest and like going through and pinning. I'll have like a pin board that's titled the character's name. And then, like, as you all know how Pinterest works, it's like once you start looking up something, it continues to recommend more to you. So I'll like kind of start collecting things from there, and I guess that will kind of bounce off of the writing. So it's like once I know how they look, then that can help infuse into the writing and vice versa. Um, so yeah, I think that with my characters, I wanted them to have unique characteristics. So, you've got like the big golden retriever with a heart of gold, you've got the more intellectual, methodical type. You've got the arrogant beats, or is it arrogant, who like kind of goes to the beat of his own drum. All these different characters where if you feel like you put them in the same room together, they're all going to, interact a little differently.
Oh, that's really interesting. You know what's funny about that is like for me, I feel like visuals are always second because like I really focus a lot on like the dialogue, and I'm like
Yeah.
I feel like the tone for me is like so much more important than what they look like aesthetically. Cuz sometimes I like to throw off the aesthetic, like if they're like a really mean character, I'm like, I wonder if they would dress like, a child or something. So that's really
Yeah.
interesting. I like that. What about you, Eiley?
So when I create characters, I go about it two different ways. It depends. Um, Sometimes I start with the character design, like I think Janice was mentioning.
Mhm,
Uh,
mhm.
I'll have a design in mind, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this, and then I kind of build around that. Colors play into personality a lot. If they have more bright colors, that can really line up with their personality more. But I also like to start with plot too, how the character fits into the story and what they're meant to do, and how that story will um, affect them as a character, whether it's their personality or their design. Um, for example, if you have a character from a really harsh background, you know they're gonna have scars or a more darker, less appealing design, while a character who is maybe from the ocean might have more aquatic designs. Yeah, it's those are kind of the two ways I go about it.
Oh, that's really cool too. Like I like that a lot. Like it's kind of like environmental creating
Yeah,
almost. Yeah, yeah, that's neat.
building into your environment, but also
Yeah,
into your story.
yeah, yeah. Do y'all have like a different process for like say when you create characters for fun versus for like a story?
Um, when I create characters for fun, it's purely design based. Like, oh, I like pink
Yeah.
and purple. I'm gonna pink, purple, sparkles and stars. I'm gonna throw that into a character. That's more fun characters. Story based is pretty much what I just said. Start with the plot and the idea and grow from there.
Yeah, I think when it comes to fun, it's just like kind of like going with the flow of it. Because like I did this pretty recently. I made like a a mushroom witch, and I was like, oh, I kind of want her to look, a little bit, I want her to be a little bit thicker, and she's got all these potions and stuff that she's carrying and stuff like that. So I think it's more visual when it comes to like just fun. And then especially like with your color choices and stuff like that, you can be a little bit more um, experimental with it versus like when you're doing a comic, you kind of want to stick to it like a select set of colors for your character so that like they're identifiable at all times in the comic. So like there's that difference in like color structure when it's fun versus like the story.
Yeah, I think something with a fun character design, it's almost like how when you're sketching, you're kind of like drawing just for fun. So it's almost like you can kind of go with the flow and do like whatever idea comes to mind, even though it might not make like logistical sense. Like maybe their outfit doesn't really work in battle, but you're just making it look the way it does because it's cool. But then that can always like inspire future design choices down the line. Like I'm kind of in the process right now of working on some things to come, and they're really just for fun, just some alternative character designs, but it kind of is now in your arsenal and you can put in your back pocket for later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can always use the excuse of it's fiction, anything can happen.
Yeah.
The design isn't working.
Trust me, anime is filled with nonsensical character designs.
You can do it just because.
Exactly. That's how I feel. I feel like a lot of times, like there's all like these guides and rules and stuff and whatnot. But sometimes I'm like, I just want to do it because it's fun. Like I know my setting is in the like for example, like someone could be like, I know my setting is in the 1800s, but I really want this one character to be in bell bottoms. Put them in bell bottoms.
It could be the future.
Listen, that's one of the 12 principles of animation is appeal. As long as it looks good, you're fine.
Our resident animator here, like with all of the knowledge.
I got all the stuff.
So let's talk about webtoons then. Like, we've got like our general ideas of like our process for creating characters, but like webtoons is like a whole different ball gaming. You're like drawing these characters every week. Like, do you have a different process when you're thinking about creating a webtoon character?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. As somebody who was more in like the illustration world before diving into like comic and cartoonist type of work, I feel like my style did have to change, but that's only to accommodate, more like dynamic poses, accommodate, drawing quickly, being economical with, how much time you're spending on these different things. Um, and that does, I think, in exchange, change the type of design you have for your character. Like whether it's comics or animation, you are drawing frame by frame, panel by panel, these characters for, however long you do this. So I definitely think that my character design had to kind of be simplified in a way. But then, that doesn't stop me from putting them in a more intricate, dress or a more intricate design when I'm doing like their illustration or like, print work and stuff. So I definitely think that the design does not change because you still have like your art style, of course, but I think it had to kind of shift to adapt to working on a comic that I'm doing like so much. Um, there's definitely a certain, look that is like kind of popular when it comes down to webtoons. I coined it in my head the manhwa male. It's like black cat features, dark hair. I mean, as you can see from my image on the screen, I'm not exempt from, using what's appealing, but I think that in general, like it's always nice to have some good diversity. I think that I wanted to step out of the box, and there are a lot of like my story takes place in like space, where if you watch like Star Wars, if you watch, Guardians of the Galaxy, there are different species, there are different um races, different colors, and all this other stuff. So I feel like that kind of already puts you into the point where you are drawing something very different from what a usual human is. And I think it's fun to kind of push yourself to be a little more exaggerated with your character designs. Of course, you still have, your main character that you also want to be appealing. But yeah, I think that overall it's been definitely a journey. But I think that they've come out pretty good.
No, I love that. That's so, so cool. Like there's a lot to take away from that too, just because I like when you said that it's still your art style, like at the
Yeah.
end of the day. Because sometimes I think like a lot of people think of it as two different styles. Like I have like my normal style and my webtoon style. And so I've never thought of it that way, but I really like the way you phrased that.
Hmm.
What
I
about you guys?
Oh,
I think when it comes to like, uh, I think the key difference is like Shay said, is that simplification of your characters is so important. If your character has a lot of details in their clothing, you're going to dread every page that you make as you go if that character is like commonly showing up in your series. So like just keep that in mind when you are like designing your characters, because every little element and detail that you make uh is going to show up consistently, or like you're going to try and make it as consistent as possible, and like that'll start to show up as you go. So like just really think about that when it comes to like making like your web comic, or your series in general.
mhm. I'd also like to add on to that. When creating comics, really anything that you're drawing over and over and over, not only do you need to keep a simple design for it, but you're going to nail that in your head, whatever design it is. So, when creating your characters, it's good to make sure that not only is it simplistic and something you know you're able to create, but it's something you really enjoy. Um, yeah, that I keep
Yeah,
losing my train of thought.
Yeah.
I think that over time too, drawing your character does get quicker the more that you
Hmm.
do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so then that kind of it opens you up maybe to, once you do get more comfortable with the character design, then, maybe 3 episodes involve a slightly different outfit, or a
Yeah.
slightly different thing that their style that they have. So yeah, I think that over time it has gotten a lot quicker, which has helped the process become faster overall.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I think the thing of it too is like a lot of people, whenever they're like making their webtoon or getting into their webtoon, like more detail makes it feel like it's better than the simplified. Like sometimes I think when you draw something and it's like really simple, or like it just doesn't feel finished. And so I think sometimes people feel like the piece is unfinished, or like adding these embellishments will make like it pop so much better. And I think it's just like figuring out ways to do it where you're like satisfied with whatever you make. So I think it's just a little bit of a learning curve in adapting to like webtoons myself.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I will add on to that. It does also kind of depend on what tool you're using to create it. I've seen some people who create webcomics using 3D models. And when you're using 3D models, you have a lot more creativity because you don't have to draw it over and over and over. You just have to pose it. So, someone in the chat mentioned with animation, you're gonna burn yourself out. You're gonna be drawing the character a lot. But when it comes to animation, that's also a different medium where you have the tools to put more design into it. So it does really depend on the program you're using. For example, I know Clip Studio does have like lace pens, and pretty much every
Mhm.
drawing program has pens you can download for fabrics and textures, and that can help make your art a lot quicker if you want to add more detail. You just need to
Yes.
Oh
keep in
yeah.
mind that the
It's like
extra little time you'll still add to it.
yeah. Another thing you can do is you can literally kind of make stamps out of your characters.
Oh yeah.
It is like if you have a like a draw like an image that you put in like certain pages of your comic and you like how it looks, or if it's like general enough that you can like copy and paste it
Mhm.
into other pages, definitely do that. Don't feel like you have to make every single, and I'm saying this, but I know I'm very much a culprit of this too, but you know, you don't have to make every single illustration like fresh out of your head. You can always recycle
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
reuse images, poses, and stuff that your characters have done in previous episodes. And that gives you the freedom to like update them and modify them along the way
Yeah.
too as your
Yeah.
art gets better.
Smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I was thinking.
I would add to that and warn against just don't use it too much because it'll
Yeah.
eventually become very obvious if you're using one stamp
Yeah.
over and over.
That is really interesting. Like I don't know if I've ever noticed like a reused panel when I'm reading, but I'm
Ooh.
also not an observant reader. Like I'm just there for vibes and like
Mhm.
to have a good time.
I
So
love this club, but that's a culprit of that. Like I'm like, oh, I've seen that one before. I've seen that image before. It's not a bad thing. It's just you'll notice it if you're
wait, which one is it?
Cursed Princess Club.
Oh,
Oh.
like
There's
yeah.
a few like illustrations there. I'm like, I've seen that one before, but like it's okay. It works.
Yeah. I see it all the time. But like sometimes it just calls for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cantella said, you'll need to draw that outfit over and over. Too complicated means more time consuming or hand pain. Yeah, I think you don't want to wear yourself out, which I can get on a soapbox about like work conditions, but that's not what this stream is about.
Don't make a Fire Emblem character for your
Oh
webcomic.
Oh,
my god,
yup,
don't get me
exactly.
started.
Don't do it.
I love Fire Emblem. Don't
Me
you
too.
But I don't
Yeah.
like
bash my Fire Emblem characters like that.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure they're wearing their fingers to the bone
Yeah.
by doing that.
Whoa.
So
Oh man, yeah. Okay, yeah. I'm not gonna touch that one because I'm like, oh, we could talk about some things. We were kind of talking about this, but like, what about art style? Like, does this affect your designs? Like, we kind of elaborated on it a little bit. Was there anything that somebody wanted to add to this?
To art style. Um,
Yes. I think it does. It can affect character designs a lot. Um, for example, if you're going with a really cutesy art style, if you try to make a really scary character, that's not going to portray as well. So I think it can also play into your art style helps strengthen your character designs too.
yeah.
So building based either around your art style or around that kind of feel to it can be really helpful.
I think you can have like different approaches to your art style in a sense that like you have your main art style for like your webcomic series, but then you can have additional styles to showcase you know like illustrations and like advertisement campaigns for your series. I feel like it's a good way to balance out like the style that you're already working in and like kind of like the monotony of working in one style for so long. Um so yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was looking at some earlier episodes um and it's really very interesting how much it changes over the course of drawing your
Oh yeah.
story. And you kind of see, I feel like my change was not only me being more comfortable and like developing my skill of drawing more frequently, because before that I would draw every now and then, draw fan art, put stuff online, blah blah blah. But when you like are exercising that drawing muscle, you're like kind of learning new skills when it comes to like rendering, how you approach certain anatomy, like heads and faces and things like that. So I definitely think that it's like your art style kind of like it improves over time. I think anybody who can go back to episode 1 of a webcomic definitely sees how that person started out. And it's not that it was like bad, it was that it felt like the start of that skill developing, I think. Cuz yeah, like I can look at my previous work and kind of see similarities between it. And I know that's always been a discussion. It's like, "Oh, I wish I had a consistent art style," and things like that. I hear that a lot, and I even have said it myself. I think it just comes from practicing and consistently doing it, and then kind of growing into, I would say, what works. So now, for example, I feel much more like I'm drawing the characters more consistently, episode by episode, which at first I felt like in earlier episodes, I'm like, oh, they don't really look like that anymore. But I think you kind of edit your process, and by editing, you get to the point where you're like, no, this is actually how I want them to look. I'll probably be redrawing my character sheets now that I'm like, no, this is how I really want Zan to look, or how I really want Sophie to look. So
Mhm.
I think it kind of changes. I think it kind of becomes, it matures, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I mean, like you were saying, drawing something over and over and over and over again, that's definitely going to be strengthening your art style. Like, I
Mhm.
can look at when I first started making comics, I started with Your Future Past, and the very first chapter, oh my goodness, I had to redraw some of that. It was so bad compared to like where I am now.
Like, I think to our earlier point about like the art style affecting like the characters, like the cutesy style and
Mhm.
like something a little more scary. I think sometimes art style can help you to identify some of your weaknesses too. And
Oh
so
yeah.
Mhm.
it
Oh,
really
yeah.
helps you like when you're in that design process and you're like drawing something outside of the box, like you really have to flex those muscles. And I think that's a good thing. Like I think you can come up with something where it may not be 100% there, but it's passable. And then as y'all were saying, as you keep like drawing over and over again, you can develop it to the place that you want it to be. And I
Mhm.
think every character is like refined over time by the artist, unless like I don't know, like it's a professional team and they're just satisfied with it. But
Yep.
like
Yeah.
but like I think TOG is a good example of that. Like Tower of God, the beginning of the series, the all of the characters still embody to me the exact same personalities and vibes that they did from like episode 1, but the new episodes now I think just have like a more refined look to them, but it still conveys the same thing.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
And oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think that just really, testifies to how solid like their character personality traits are as a character. Like those stay consistent. Their styles or their designs may have changed, but their character personalities didn't and are consistent, which is really, which is a good thing. You don't want to change the outfits and the style of your characters and they're a completely different person the next, couple episodes further down.
Hmm. And so I know we kind of were like developing or touching on this a little bit, but like, what would make a design complicated for Webtoons? Because listen, when
Layers.
you look on the app, there's like so many different styles, so many different like time periods. Like there's like high fantasy, low fantasy, like things from like early history to like current day to futuristic. Like what makes something complicated?
So, Oh, that's actually a really good question. What makes something complicated? I think one way to look at that question of what makes something complicated is what makes something complicated for your team. If it's
Mhm.
just you, that's a limit you have to set for yourself. If you're working with a team and you have people who their job is to add, like they get paid to add details, then that's a limit that you need to set with your team. So it really depends on your production time, how many people are working on it, and how much effort you're willing to put into it.
So, would you make a complicated design?
Okay, well, I have multiple projects, so it depends. For a webcomic, no. For an animation, I do 3D animation, so for a 3D animation, yes.
My
Mm.
answer is no, because I learned my lesson from the beginning. So no, because there's just a drastic change in outfits from like the very first couple of episodes. Because I learned immediately, like, you cannot have a complex outfit and have characters that show up very regularly. So if the character shows up very, very sparsely, then maybe, but it's still not a yes. So
Yeah.
no.
I'll just go with no
I,
for this since they were centered around webcomics.
I'm so.
So,
Oh, sorry. Let me ask Janisha this real quick though.
yeah,
Like,
go for it.
so, like, don't be mad at me, but like in my mind, when you said that, I was like, your characters don't wear clothes though. Aren't they like energy? Like, do they have
Yeah,
on clothes?
clothes are technically energy, so it's like they, they can adjust and change them. So it's just like it's a matter of how I feel like drawing it, but but still, it's like
Yeah.
So it's like an illusion. Like they sometimes have clothes on, but not really.
that
It,
yeah, if their energies are disrupted enough, it's like basically like yeah.
gotcha. Okay.
That's a cool like universal rule.
Yeah.
Like your world's rules. That's cool.
Concept of like world building like that. Love it.
Mhm.
Sorry, Shay, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say I would not probably make it. I would make it according to their personality, and like you said earlier, Apollo, like get it like just to what you feel is satisfactory for them. And then, call it that. I do like drawing like cute outfits and things, so I definitely jump at the chance to put my characters in like, their special outfits. But most of the time it's also, I did kind of help myself because it's like a special forces group, so they have
Mhm.
uniforms, so that helps.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
So that's a good excuse, and then of course they have their standard character outfit. So like with like Bob's Burgers or Simpsons is like you only see them in these clothing. um, but there was this one arc where they had to fight off some attackers and they were in their combat uniforms. And I did the, character design sketch of the uniform. And I was like, you know what? I think this is simple enough. You've got their combat holsters, all this other stuff. And I promise you, I really try to make it as simple as could be. But those few episodes were so tedious because now I have to draw them from different perspectives or from low angle, high angle, from behind. And I'm not gonna lie, if someone was really eagle eyed, they probably would be like, wait, it doesn't make sense that the strap is here but in this panel, the strap is somewhere else. I'm like, I did what I could, okay?
You said get over it.
Yes, it's like if you can look at it for 2 seconds and tell they're wearing a uniform, I've done my job.
Mm.
So every
Yeah.
now and then I get a little bit complicated, but I try to return back to their consistent look.
Like that's so funny because it makes me think of like a character design I did recently, and like I was like, this was it's kind of for fun, kind of not, but like the character's wearing like a tutu and it's like frilly, and so
Oh.
like I drew it, and when I finished it, I was like, you know what? Because like in my mind, I was thinking, oh, it doesn't matter what where these frills are placed, but then I started thinking about it later, and I was like, you know what? Fabric doesn't change, so it kind of does.
I wanted to point out Day Day does this comment in the chat. Color choice, in my opinion, some people have a lot of different colors that are bright or lots of patterns, and that looks busy to the eye. And that's another thing you have to keep in mind when you have multiple characters in a scene and or throughout the story, is like you don't want their outfits like competing because they're so complex. And it's like you want to keep their color script consistent, but then you also want to keep it where their colors and their, even if they do have patterns on their outfits or complex things on there, it still works with the other people that they're like interacting with. So like you really have to think about how, it works not just for the character but the people around the other character, or like the
Mhm.
character.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, like balancing is not something that I think, like in the design process, I feel like that's something that you probably think about last, but that's a really helpful tip. So with other tips and tricks, like what are some things that have helped you guys with your designs?
Uh, I just want to note that yes, while you do have to draw your character's boring old design every panel, you also get to draw special outfits like this one.
Oh, that's so cute.
They look very dapper. I love it.
Yes, I love like anytime I get to draw them in something other than their
Other
usual
than their name.
stuff.
It's definitely giving like date night vibes. Like he better be taking her
Yeah.
somewhere good.
Mhm.
Oh, maybe soon.
Aw.
um, but yeah, I think something that helps. I think actually a comment um was it by Marsh? Characters should have enough that helps their silhouette design. I 100% agree.
Mhm.
When I did my character design before even starting, I did like the silhouette test and I was very pleased with like how everybody's shape, how their body shape was so unique. Um you can do that with like other characters from like popular, cartoons or TV
Mhm.
shows and stuff where they'll do like a little silhouette and you're like, "Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
like I can tell that's Ariel or whomever." So I definitely think like there are angles and curves and things that can also help tell another story. If you have a character that's more aggressive, maybe he has like spikier hair than maybe a character that's a little bit more calm, cool, and collected. Um, Also, the colors. I think with one of my characters, she is completely blue. Her skin is blue, and that's not just a coincidence. It's just that, you know, her character is the more level headed of the group. And by using a color that kind of helps reflect that, can be really helpful. And then I like to have, a unique element to characters. So for, Sophie, her little curls in the on the sides of her face are, no matter what hairstyle she has, she's gonna have those little curls on the side of her face because that's just very unique to her. And that's something I think if, a character looks between panels, they'll always recognize that element to her. So, yeah, like having something that kind of like sets your character apart, not just from the rest of the characters, but makes them unique to your story, can really go a long way and also helps with recognition. Somebody's on Instagram and they're consistently seeing your character that doesn't quite look like the character of other webcomics, then they might, that might stick out to them even more.
Mhm. I'd like to add on to that with shape language. Squares, triangles, circles. That is what I learned in school, and that's the biggest thing to base characters off of. Using them for guides for proportions, heads, shoulders, all sorts of body parts. Circles help, like softer curves help. What's the word? It helps give more to like softer characters, maybe
More
someone
Mm-hmm.
empathy.
really sweet. Yeah. Triangles might be someone who's uncertain or tall, lanky. Squares are more rigid, really sturdy with their opinions and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Shape language. There's a lot of examples on them or about that on Google, but yeah, shape language. Squares, triangles, and circles is the best thing to start basing it off of.
I will say,
Mm-hmm.
I'll add on to that. I like Steven Silver's book on shape language.
Mm-hmm.
Like I forget the name of it, but Steven Silver's got a really good book about like doing, like just drawing out characters and having that strong shape language and being able to stylize your characters.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what it's called.
I'm looking
I
it
have
up.
it, but I forget what it's called right now.
Is it the Silver Way?
Yes, The
Yep.
Silver Way by Steven Silver.
Mm.
And that's the guy who did Kim Possible and
Yeah.
a few other things. I don't know what else, but
Basically all the cartoons we watched growing up.
yeah.
Yeah, they did have some strong shape language back in the day. I mean, they still do.
Yeah.
But just saying, like, immediately my mind thinks of characters like Johnny Bravo and
Mm-hmm.
like the old people from Courage the Cowardly Dog, like stuff like that. I'm like, shape language was really hardcore.
Now, I will give Fire Emblem credit when
Oh
it comes to
no.
silhouettes. Okay, no, because
They got some good silhouettes.
don't make your outfits complicated like Fire Emblem characters, but make your silhouettes strong like
Mhm.
Fire Emblem characters. If
I
you play
mean,
Fire Emblem Heroes,
Oh my
you
goodness.
know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But their silhouettes are so strong, you can kind of guess the characters before they're even announced. That's
Yeah.
where people would get, and that's really good. That is really good character design right there. If you can have your people guess without like anything more than just a silhouette and no more
Mm-hmm.
information than that.
it's that who's that Pokemon meme.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically.
And then another tip that I'm gonna say when it comes to um, your characters is, and this is more so on like the personality side, give your characters a hobby, give them things to do outside of just being purely motivated by your main character's motives or whatever. Like every character should have their own motive, whether it's big or small. And so when you do that, it makes it so that your characters aren't one dimensional, because
Mm-hmm.
when they're solely focused on what the main character is doing, then it kind of makes them fall flat. I think a good example of this is like, and don't take me out anybody, but Sailor Moon, the old 90s animated version versus Sailor Moon Crystal, because like there was a key difference in like how the characters like had their own things that they wanted to do despite being Sailor Scouts in the 90s version. But in Crystal, they're kind of like, oh, we're here for you. It's how you were going to do, whatever you need.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Your characters need stuff to do besides your main character's motive.
You're
So,
right. Because one was like the bookish one, the other one was the fighter.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
that goes, and then that plays into maybe what type of character that they would look like.
Yeah.
And it was like those beats of in the original 90s one where, like, for example, when Ami wanted to go to medical school and they were gung ho for her doing that. Like they sent her off with her Star Wand and she was about to get on the plane, but then she changed her mind and went back to still be a Sailor Scout, but she could have gone to medical school. But they didn't have that Sailor Moon Crystal. And I think that is just like a crucial difference of like character dynamics and like their character interactions with one another when you have a motive versus when you don't.
And gives for more content too. Like you said, if a character wants to go to medical school, you can have a whole episode about them getting ready to go to med school and then changing their mind last minute. Like if you just want some small little fillers, you have some extra content for that.
Fillers matter.
Fillers.
They matter when they're not like 65 years.
Yeah.
So Hoot Hoot said, I won't tolerate Sailor Moon slander. You've made an enemy, Janisha.
I love Sailor Moon. I do. I love it so much. But that was like a key issue for me.
It's so hard. So okay, this is a little side tangent.
Character dynamic wise.
Like so Janisha, what Sailor Moon do you recommend to people?
The 90s one.
Listen, I feel like I can't recommend either because I have like a bootleg version of the 90s.
They both have their, their faults.
And anytime I recommend that one to people, they're like, it's so dated. And like my version that I have still has Sailor Moon says in it. So it's super dated.
It's got charm.
Oh man, it's amazing. It's amazing. Okay. I was just curious. That's what I'm gonna keep recommending. So I will say in terms of like tips or tricks or whatever, I think just from a design perspective, like it's just important to have like a general idea of what you want. Like and following tropes, I think is really helpful when you don't know what you want to do, because I think like, and there was some point where like people just like started hating tropes and I was like, no, these can be really
they're great.
You. So like if you need help or you're trying to figure something out, like looking up a trope or looking up a list of tropes, like that can be really helpful for any like designer, in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
characters are a trope.
Yeah. It's not a bad thing. And I learned this in a film class. It's like, when you're describing your script or you're describing your story, you say it's like this, but, and then insert, what makes your thing unique. So it's like when I was designing my Android character, I was like, it's very obviously like, your C3PO. We all seen in science fiction that robotic character that has glimpses of personality, that type of thing. So yeah, like I don't think that it's so bad that maybe your character design is similar or kind of harkens to some other character, but I think that innately your unique lens is going to still make it something different, because all your ideas are a combination of different ideas that you've seen. So it's not, you obviously don't want to make your bootleg version of another character. You definitely want to avoid that, but I think you'll probably get feedback, and if it really is just too similar to a character that exists.
Yeah.
I will say, in a counterpoint to that, like two characters that are very similar can exist at the same time, though. Like I would, my only caution to that is like if someone asked you and you did copy it, like obviously you're just lying if you tell them like you didn't do it.
It's like we all got eyes.
But like there's a bunch of instances, like I think there's like the Parasite main character and the Yuri on Ice character look like the same character, like 100%. And there's a bunch of happenstance of characters like that. So I would say like it can happen and it can work, but it wouldn't be a route I would encourage. So. Oh, and I guess like my last tip, if you're on Webtoons, like if you have a hottie character and it's a dude, like the fans want to see the abs. So
oh, not the abs.
Yeah, the abs.
Oh Lord.
Oh man.
I had this one character who was like the main character's dad, and a bunch of my friends thought he was hot, so I kept like putting in panels of him like pulling up his hair seductively.
Ooh.
Hey,
you gotta give the readers what you want.
if the fans want it, like,
Exactly.
it's not a problem to like throw them a bone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Keep them entertained for a bit.
Exactly, exactly. So I will say thank you guys so much. We covered a lot of information. If y'all have a few minutes.
Hello again, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the stream tonight. This was really fun. I'm Janisha, or Janisha Colors. You can find me anywhere at Janisha Colors. My website is also janishacolors.com. You can read Universe, which is currently on hiatus, but we're working on that. You can read Universe on Webtoons. And like I said, you can find me anywhere at Janisha Colors. So, yeah.
All right.
And
Like Janisha said, thank you guys for checking out the stream and being with us tonight. Um, sorry, I'm so tired. um, yeah, I'm just reiterating, I'm the creator of Your Future Past and The Assemblage of the Stars. Currently I'm not working on my comics. I'm focusing on my talents as an animator, so I'm working on the animated pilot for Your Future Past. So if you want to see more updates on that, follow my Instagram and TikTok if that's sticking around. And more social medias, and I'll be posting more about that.
Cool. Yes. So Artsume Shay on pretty much every platform out there. My web comic, Space Ultima, is available on Webtoon and Inkverse, and I'm hoping to put it on more platforms in the near future. So you'll definitely be able to read it all in one place. Wherever you choose to read your comics. And then I just started a Patreon as of today. So definitely a shout out on that.
Yay!
Yay! So right now it is a fully free Patreon. So it's early content and also some behind the scenes stuff. And then I don't know, I kind of feel like I'm treating it like Tumblr back in the day. How you can be a little
I miss
bit lengthier. Yeah, be a little bit more lengthy on, your descriptions for stuff. So yeah, it's just gonna be a fun spot, and then hopefully paid tiers will be down the line later this year. So yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. We discussed a lot of stuff. You guys gave a bunch of really cool advice and things that are very practical that I think any creator could implement into their series that they're working on. So, my question to the community is, what is your creation process for characters? I want to know about designs from the writing standpoint, from your drawing standpoint. Like, do you use mood boards? Do you use Pinterest? Like, I need to know all of the details, like everything. Please let me know. And so, with that, I will say goodbye to you guys.
Thank you guys.
Bye.